I want to thank ADL for handing over the pulpit to 4 lay leaders in a row. This is Methodists really like their pastors to preach. So I told my Methodist 86-year-old mother that I was going to be preaching today, and I was a little nervous about the audience would be okay with a lay leader. And my mother's reply was, well, they'll just have to suffer through. So, good luck. You have my mother's blessing. Let's quiet for a moment of prayer. God of grace, we look to you to open our minds and our hearts to the abundance that you offer our lives. Bless us now as we reflect together on your wisdom. Have you ever opened the web browser on your computer to check the temperature or sports score? And just there at the top of the page is the very same ceiling fan that you've been thinking of putting in your back room. Or right over to the left, there's a flashing set of garden tools that you were thinking about getting your sister. And then right below that, a pair of sandals that you just bought online last week. Coincidence? Hardly. This phenomenon is the product of a complex collection of your cookies, collected by your web browser, or your online orders, or maybe even your Facebook page. A cookie, for those of us who aren't computer literate, is the little data collector software piece that tracks and stores your web searches. And they can be used to customize all the advertising that will appear on your screen. We are unwittingly and perhaps unwillingly recording our spending habits every time we click on a web search, every time we slide a grocery club card or purchase an item with our credit cards. We are tracked. You have been defined and organized into a little buying machine. Even your friendly neighborhood grocery store now defines you by what you buy and is pleased to hand you a fistful of coupons based on your spending patterns that match your needs precisely. You have become what you consume, and it is present in an organized form, an encapsulated picture of who you are. Or is it? Is it who you are? How do you define yourself? By your purchases? By your buying power? By the things you own? These criteria are how our society values you because you are now easily quantified by what you consume, all because the cookies on your computer collect this information. You have become your cookies. Is this the pinnacle of human life, a ceiling fan? Is this composite picture of our buying habits the definition of who we are as God's people? No. Now, if we were more of a hellfire and brimstone sort of congregation, this is the part in the sermon where I would throw up my hands and I would admonish you, stop, turn around. You are not created to be merely a collection of your purchasing choices. Don't let your cookies define you. That's the teacher part. Do you like that? Well, who are we then? And how do we seek our definition, if not from the wisdom of our consumer culture? This is an important topic for self-reflection for a Christian because we have some theological evidence that the word consumer is a contrary definition to the human species. Well, the Old Testament, for example, tells us we are made a little less than the angels. John Wesley encourages us to work toward perfection, but we seldom consider that this advice, following this advice would lead us to the perfect sandals. Jesus offers us the parable of the prodigal son as an example of a young man who defined himself as a consumer by squandering his wealth on luxuries and decadence. In fact, the word prodigal does not mean someone who wanders away or is lost. It literally means one who wastes money, a spendthrift. So, what is our spiritual responsibility here for a rich life, the life of abundance that Jesus offers those who are wise? Before we explore ways that we might become responsible stewards of the wealth that God has given us, perhaps we should look at why we need to buy things. Our motivations are more spiritual than you might think at first. While I was preparing for this sermon, I remembered a lecture that I often gave in the communication classes at Pasadena City College. It was a part of an investigation of an individual's need to consume. This is an element, actually, of nonverbal communication. In other words, we use the things we own to communicate who we are because we're motivated by certain psychological needs to have things. Here's a few examples of the reasons why we might buy things. First, the easing of fear. The fear of death or powerlessness or change or loss. This all may lead a person to snatch the tangibles available at the moment in order to hold on to the present and construct a feeling of stability, no matter how artificial that might be. Reverend DePano, 2 weeks ago, spoke about that spiritual upheaval of fear and when we fail to trust in God's abundance for our lives. Or we might buy things for self-definition. We prove our existence, express our self-image, and show the outer world our success by what we own. Or we might buy things as an emotional outlet. If we cannot fulfill our emotional needs through reason or relationships or productive creativity, we often then turn to material objects to give us a feeling of calm or value. Ownership of an object helps us feel real. Or we might simply buy things because we are too stressed to do otherwise. We squander our time on busyness, and we are left with only a choice to squander our money to compensate for the loss of time. Example might be eating out at restaurants. It's so common these days to have to grab a quick fast food dinner because we did not use our time efficiently enough to cook. And this costs more money, and we are soon trading off money for time, and we're using neither to their best advantage. We're not even enjoying the fellowship and relaxation of restaurant dining. So each of these reasons for buying and having things is ultimately a question of feeling secure about who we are and our purpose on this earth. These are spiritual matters. What are we to do about this conflict between the wisdom of our consumer culture and the wisdom of God? Well, first, it would be important to truly know in our hearts that we are loved and valued for who we are, not our trappings. The way Jesus tried to help us understand this was through the character of the father in the prodigal son parable. The father never ceased loving his errant son, even though the son had spent his inheritance on fluff. The father welcomed the son home with forgiveness and wrapped him in the abundance of love that should have defined him in the first place. The father knew that his son was not defined by the cookies on his computer. We can strive to become spiritually wise, recognizing that we are to be good stewards of all that God has blessed us with, and that we are a being that is unconditionally loved. And next, we can be practically wise as well. We have to find ways to live in this consumer society without letting it define who we are. We are perhaps familiar with a few colloquial bits of advice about financial matters. For example, never go to the grocery store hungry, or make a list and stick to it, or buy your food from the perimeter of the grocery store, not the center aisles, or wait 24 hours before purchasing an impulse buy. Well, these are wise guidelines, but there's more to it for the serious planner. Our congregation is currently studying the book Enough. In this study, author Adam Hamilton offers some extremely concrete suggestions for getting our financial lives more in balance with who we are as God's people. In your bulletin today, there are a couple of worksheets, single sheet, that are designed to help us with the practical task of looking at our finances so that our spiritual wisdom informs our practical wisdom. The first handout is called My Life and Financial Goals Worksheet, is about setting your goals. This is an exercise in thinking about who you are, your life purpose, your gifts and talents that might lead you to fulfillment. The questions then add to the physical element by asking, how are your finances supporting your life purpose? I encourage you to spend some time today thinking about and maybe writing your responses to these questions. Adam Hamilton goes on to suggest 6 financial tasks that will help us align our financial planning with our spiritual values. Here's what he suggests. 1, pay your tithe and your offering first. Spiritual balance is undergirded if we put God first in our living and in our giving. Take God's portion from the top and live on whatever is left. 2, create a budget and keep track of your expenses. Well, this is common sense, but easy to get lost in the fervor of stressful living. The second worksheet on the back of the other one is in your bulletin. It will help you put some numbers into your planning so that you are in charge of your expenditures, not your expenditures in charge of you. 3, simplify your life. Live below your means, not above your means. This discipline is critical to the success of any financial plan, and next Sunday's sermon will be devoted entirely to this topic. 4, establish an emergency fund. This could be an account separate from checking or long-term savings that's set aside specifically for emergencies. Our study suggests laying aside $1,000 and then adding to it as you can until you have 3 months' worth of income. With this cushion, you will not have to rely on your credit cards as a backup. 5, pay off those credit cards. Use cash or debit cards for purchases. Save credit cards for wise uses. Some experts suggest paying off the credit card with the highest interest rate first, or perhaps pay off the smallest debt first to give you a feeling of success. Cut up your cards as you pay them down so you're not using the future to support the present. Credit cards can be useful, may be necessary for some things like travel or the internet, but remember to be diligent about paying them off each month so you accrue no interest. And 6, practice long-term savings and investing habits. Saving money is the number one wise money management principle that everyone should practice. And don't save just for the sake of saving. That'd be called hoarding. And hoarding is frowned on in the Bible. It's a practice of the fools, it says. Because that's failing to understand the purpose of the savings. Savings are meant to be useful, and there should be 3 types: emergency savings, saving for wants or goals, and retirement savings. So you can see we have a lot to juggle. Our buying habits that are summed up by our cookies, our recognition of God's love and purpose for us as stewards of God's world, and an understanding of our own finances. If we can balance the wisdom of each of these, we truly can lead an abundant, God-centered life, because we are more than what our cookies might indicate.